Alright, the very last thing out of 6.1, you're going to be dividing or simplifying radicals with variables. So to simplify the variables, you're going to divide the powers of each variable of the radicand by the index or the root. And so basically here's what you're going to do. You're going to divide the inside powers by the outside root. So you're dividing the inside by the outside. So first example we're going to look at is we're going to do the third root of x to the 12th and y to the 18th. And I'm picking the odd root to start with because if we have an even root, we have to worry about the absolute values, but we'll worry about that on the next problem. So for these, this is 12 divided by 3 for the x, and for the y, it's 18 divided by 3. Divided by 3 is 4. 18 divided by 3 is 6, and that would be your final answer. Okay, for the next example, I'm going to bring in another even exponent. So we're going to do the square root of x to the 6th. And again, the key thing about this one is it's square root of x to the 6th, and because it's the square root, we've got understood 2 here. So when you divide this one, it's 6 divided by 2, which is just x to the 3rd. And the key thing we talked about earlier was that if you get to this answer and it's an absolute value with x to an odd power, you have to put the absolute value around that answer. Now, if that had been x to the 4th, we would not have had to worry about that, because if you plug a negative number into x to the 4th, it's going to eventually make itself out to be positive. If you put a negative number into x to the 3rd, it may be negative if you do it to the 3rd power, and if you do it to the 2nd power, it's going to be positive. So we still have that option that if we were doing the absolute values, if it's in the even exponent or even index, you have to put absolute value around the answer if it makes a difference for the answer to be positive or negative. And for this problem, we'll do a variable and a number that's on the radicand. And for that one, we'll break it up into 2 parts. We're going to do the square root of 81, and we're going to do the square root of x to the 4th. Square root of 81 is 9. Square root of x to the 4th, and again, dividing that by 2, 4 divided by 2 is x squared. Now, and for this particular problem, here we put absolute values around it, and we could do that here, but if we do that, the absolute value of 9 is 9, and the absolute value of x squared, no matter what number you plug in for x squared, because it's a squared number, it's always going to be positive. So that's one of those that 9 will stay positive, x squared is always positive. So for this one, we did not need the absolute values, so that would make it 9x squared. So basically it comes down to this. If you're doing a square root, or if you're doing a 4th root, where the index out here is a 2 or a 4, if that answer possibly could be negative, if you plugged in a negative number to get a negative answer, you have to put absolute value around that one. So that's why we put the absolute value around x to the 3rd, because if we had plugged in negative 2, that would have given us an answer of negative 8. If you plug an answer of negative 2 here, it's going to give you 4, which is going to be positive, and that's okay. Alright, 2 more examples, and we'll be done with these. So we're going to do the 5th root of 32, x to the 10th, and y to the 40th. And the good news with this one is it is an odd index, so it's the 5th root, so we do not have to worry about the absolute values. So we can break this one into parts. We're going to do the 5th root of 32. For x, it's 10 divided by 5. And for y, it's 40 divided by 5. And from an earlier problem that we did back in the first part of the lesson, 32, we could break that down and make it 2 to the 5th power. this one you've got 10 divided by 5 for 2, 40 divided by 5 for 8. So if this is fifth power and fifth root, those will cancel. We're going to get a 2, x squared, and y to the 8th. And that would be our final answer. And again, you do not have to worry about the absolute values because this was to the fifth power, or the fifth root, fifth index. And then the last problem. And the fourth root of x to the 12th and y to the 16th. And again, because it's to the fourth root, because the index is 4, we have to be careful with the absolute value parts of the answer at the end. Okay, so just dividing these out is 12 divided by 4 and 16 divided by 4. 12 divided by 4 is 3. 16 divided by 4 is 4. And again, if this comes out to be with index of 4, it's even. If either one of these answers can be absolute value, it can be negative, then you have to put the absolute value around it. If you do a negative number 3 times that you multiply it, that would make it negative, so we're going to put an absolute value here. Y to the 4th, if you do a negative number to the 4th power, it's going to stay positive, so that one doesn't need it. So that would wind up being your final answer.